Hey everybody, it's your favorite whitetail guy. I want to talk, make a little short video. You get this question asked all the time. I stumbled on this about 15, 16 years ago, and it was always right in front of my face. But deer hunting has evolved with trail cameras. I used to have the trail cameras that had the film in it. You had to pull it out and run it to the drugstore and take pictures. And then they had the regular cameras with the SD cards, and I still run a lot of them. And then they evolved into cellular cameras, so you don't have to go into the woods to disturb the deer. And you actually can kind of get a live feed about what's really going on in your woods. So I saw this. And the only name, I'm not going to say I started it, but I never heard this mentioned before. Like I said, this was probably 15, 18 years ago. Me, my brother, a couple of my friends, we got a giant lease in western Wisconsin. And the place was phenomenal. I mean, we paid a lot of money for it because it's in one of the premier western counties of Wisconsin. But the term was bully buck. You hear it all the time now. And I want to explain about bully bucks and why sometimes bucks leave. There's different reasons. I'm going to try to cover all of them in about a 5 or 6 minute video, so please be patient with me. That summer and early fall, we got a lot of pictures of some big bucks, man. 4 and 5 and 6-year-old bucks. I mean, just some hammers, man. And right about the third week of October, right when the scraping really picks up and the rubbing and, they start seeking and satelliting, there was this really big, his neck literally went into his shoulders. He only had like a 140-inch rack. And I started getting pictures. This is before cellular cameras. I would, pull the SD cards out. I ran, probably 80 on that property, and I'd pull them out and play them on the computer. I seen where this buck popped up around the 21st, 22nd of October, which is pretty normal in the Midwest, when you kind of get bucks from other properties, especially if the food is dried up and there's not that many does, they start moving into adjoining properties. And he came in there, man, and every picture I was getting, he was blowed up, either chasing or fighting bucks. I've had a couple of pictures where he was literally bedded down in the middle of a logging road in a bedding area. 2 bucks come out. He literally runs right at him, chases them off, comes back up, and sits right back in front of the camera. And I termed it and said, this buck's a bully. He just does not like any bucks being on this. I think at that time it was about 200 acres, 180 or 200 acres. I can't remember. That was a long time ago. But I know what he did do. He ran off every mature buck off the property. Now, he tolerated, or the younger bucks was no threat to him. And so they immediately would submit to him. And he would get snapped. He got snapped off, broke off, I think it was a big old 8, but he broke off a couple of times. But he was just a bully buck. And all our bucks they disappeared. Now, what happened after the rut, you have, the main rut was over and we got into December, got into the late season. Scrapes dried up. The deer were on the feed pattern. And the bully buck stayed, but he quit showing on the cards aggression. And guess what happened? All those other bucks started coming back. I didn't know it at that time until as the cameras evolved and I was able to keep literally live what's happening on my properties, that bully bucks are some of the biggest reasons why we lose bucks in the fall. Not all bucks are fighters. Some will fight, but some won't do it. Every buck has a different personality. Every buck has a different personality. There's lovers, there's fighters, and there's also travelers or wanderers, whereas they like their core area, their travel area is really wide. They may be on you for a couple of weeks, go to your neighbors on his for a week, come back. Now that's totally different. And you have to recognize that you have a traveler or a wanderer buck. And those can be very hard to kill because they're very inconsistent. It's very hard to pattern them because they'll be on you. And by the time you get set up, boom, he's decided he's going to go across the field and be in those 80 acres for another week or two. So those are wanderers. And eventually they will come back when the rut is over with, the aggression, the testosterone each day has dropped now where bucks will tolerate each other. And there's no threat or need to threaten another buck because all the does have been bred. And so those wanderers, they'll start shrinking that core area again. And then you have the other bucks that are not really fighters. They'll fight. When I think the bucks get most locked up is when 2 times of the year happens. When you have a couple of bully bucks or a bully buck and you got another buck that's very aggressive and they're very equal in size and they just finally can't, they're going to like, hey, either I'm going or you're going. And they get locked up and, they die. Or in that satelliting, seeking, chasing phase, another buck goes into a territory that he doesn't visit very much, and he comes over, and there's a bully buck or a fighter buck or a dominant buck, and they clash, and then if they're pretty equal or whatever, they get locked up and then they die. Those are the 2 times. So the sparring that we're seeing right now is nothing but the local deer herd on your property are always trying to figure out where they are in the hierarchy. And that will, even after they drop antlers, and they'll go and, to their summer core areas. And anytime they get together on a food source, they're going to try each other. Now, of course, they're not going to fight each other when they're in velvet, but they're going to fight each other. If you've never seen 2 bucks, just like you've probably seen a lot of does do that, when dominating does, 2 doe groups come together and one won't submit to the other one, man, they'll box it out like Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier. And that's what bucks do until the horns get hard, and then they start to spar, they start feeling each other, they start posturing. And again, the buck's personality, is he going to be submissive? Is he going to kind of let this guy be number 1 and he's fine with number 2 or 3 in the breeding hierarchy? Or is he like, no, I'm ready to challenge that guy? And that hierarchy can change, man, through death, disease, sickness, age. So that's why they're constantly kind of figuring each other out. That's why I made the post and have been saying that this, here in the Midwest, everything else is different. Midwest, Mid-Atlantic, Northeast. That these last couple of weeks of December, if you had pictures of bucks consistently, in September and October, as you got closer to rut, and they kind of, got into November, and then all of a sudden, they bred some, got pushed out, couldn't handle it, they should start migrating back. It's part of the deer ecology. They want to come back. Now, if there's preferred food there, that sounds like a tongue twister. If there's food there, great food that they prefer is there, they will come back, set up camp, and stay there until they drop the antlers, and then they'll start moving to their summer core areas. So this is the last 2 weeks, man. And I really believe it's because the testosterone has dropped so much, even in the bully bucks, the bucks that are above them, that they feel comfortable to come and hang out with them. Now remember, bully bucks don't always, and most of the time they don't have the biggest antlers. They have the biggest personality. And you can tell by bully bucks, if you have enough cell cameras or looking from the stand, they do not like other bucks as we get closer to November. They'll go over there and just intimidate him. Not fight him or chase him, but if he gets blowed up and starts stiff-legging and another buck submits, everything's cool and fine. So I know that's what's happening, and that's why I say that. And what's happened, the testosterone's dropping. The aggression's not where it was a month ago, and the other bucks are migrating back because they can kind of feel more safe and secure. They're not going to get hit with an antler on their side or in their head or in their butt. So, now, another thing, I get asked this all the time, and I've had it happen on me. You've had bucks all summer, and right before or just right after the antlers, get hard, the velvet drops, they disappear. And sometimes I don't understand it all. because I don't live in the woods, but I can make some really good guesses. What happens is they just don't like that situation, and I think it goes back to the bully bug. They just want to migrate back for some reason back to your neighbors or up the road where they feel comfortable, where they feel that they can kind of be way up in the hierarchy, and they understand that no matter how big their rack is, man, again, it's the personality, and really the body size plays a giant role into that. Body size and personality. So I've had that before. I'm like, oh my gosh, great bucks in July, August. They shed their velvet, and not so much now because of the way I set up my properties, but it does happen. It does happen. I have great pictures, and they just go and live in their fall core areas, and they never visit. Once in a blue moon, it depends on what's going on in the other properties. If the food really dries up and they are really hungry, not finding enough food to build the fat back, they will migrate back, but not as much or consistent as the bucks that were there for, most of the year. And then the rut started happening, fights started happening, bluffing, intimidating started happening. And I'm like, I'm fine. I also believe that some bucks during the rut, especially at that main peak, they start seeking, and they're very comfortable there because they are up in the hierarchy and they can kind of push other bucks around, and they've stayed there for a while. But that homing device, that instinct says, hey, come on back. You've been here for a couple of years now. There's preferred food, low pressure, and safety and security, which is what I try to have on my properties. And that's what I try to teach to people I give land consultations to. So anyway, that's kind of why bucks disappear and why they reappear. So there's no guarantee. If you had bucks in July and August, and then right before the antlers got hard, or right after, and they disappeared, there's a great chance. Nothing's 100% in the whitetail world, but there's a good chance they probably won't come back unless where they're at now, spent all fall, the food really dries up and they'll kind of migrate back. But if you have pictures or have had bucks, July, August, September, October, and then part of November, and then boom, they disappeared, they should start migrating back if they are still alive. So I hope that helped you guys. Just a few little lessons in deer ecology. This is why you need to subscribe to 365 with the Whitetail Guy, because they're going to get videos like this on a weekly basis, talking about deer ecology, talking about shed hunting, talking about frost seeding, talking about food plot strategies, tree stand strategies, hunting strategies, rut strategies, late season strategies. So come take the walk with me this year in 2025. You can subscribe at the top of the page, 365 with the Whitetail Guy. As I always say, guys, make sure you have a safety harness on. Wear one every time you climb up in a tree stand. I don't know why you don't. And I don't know why you don't have a lifeline hooked up in every tree that you climb in. And always shoot straight for the love of the whitetail. Will you do that for me? I'll be right here next time you come back. I'm Will the Whitetail Guy. God bless.